All right.
It works. Good afternoon, Linda. How are
Good
you?
afternoon, Jeff. Thank you so much for your interest in the mermaids
Oh,
and
yeah.
for asking me to uh, be a guest again on your
No,
podcast.
happy to.
Appreciate it.
Happy to. It's been a little while. I want to.
Yeah. But you've been very supportive. I know we did a wonderful podcast for the Blue Divide,
That's right.
and then again for Bone Country.
That's
And
right.
Bone Country, the book of prose poems, it won a major award last year. And I can't go to the awards ceremony in New York City, but anyway, it's going to be the first Saturday in May, and I can't make it. I have another commitment that weekend, but it was selected as a distinguished favorite for the NYC Big Book Award for Poetry for 2024.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
good about that. Good about that.
Congratulations and happy National Poetry Month, too.
Yes, and same to you. Hello. And, happy Poetry Month to everyone.
Oh, yeah. It should be celebrated year round. I want to welcome listeners to A Little Too Quiet. It's the Ferndale Library podcast. That's correct. It's brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library. I am Jeff, your host as always. I'm joined today by Linda Nemec Foster, esteemed author. I should say author of, if I have these statistics right, up to 14 collections of poetry.
Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm.
We are going to be talking about the latest, the Lake Huron Mermaid, which is another collaboration with Anne-Marie Oomen and the illustrator, which is Meredith Riddell.
Riddle.
We'll talk about this kind of being a sequel. There's also, you already mentioned the Blue Divide and Bone Country. Bone Country, I will touch back on that to refresh people about what that book was doing. Bone Country, your first full-length book of prose poetry, and nominated for 20 awards. I know you just mentioned that it did get that one. Also nominated for the Pulitzer Prize, which is very notable. My goodness. And then we've talked about this when Linda has been a guest on our podcast before. Poet laureate of Grand Rapids between 2003 and 2005, and the founder of the Contemporary Writers Series at Aquinas College.
Aquinas
College, and she's here to check all my facts. And I so much appreciate you coming here to cap off Poetry Month with us. And congrats.
Well, it's a pleasure, Jeff. It's an honor as always.
Yeah.
Lovely to talk to you. And one other little bit of information, Bone Country and the Blue Divide were individually nominated for the Pulitzer back in their years.
Amazing.
So yeah, that was cool.
And I believe you were just at Literati.
Yes. This was sweet. It was the Ann Arbor book launch for the Lake Huron Mermaid that you have right there. And that was just Tuesday, 2 days ago, April 22nd. And it was just really lovely. My co-author, Anne-Marie Oomen, could not join me. Many times we present together, but she had another commitment. So I went solo and we had a sweet audience. And, if you know anything about Literati, they have a very intimate performance space. It's not, very big, but we had, about 14 or 15 people there, and people bought books, which is always wonderful. And, this new book, Lake Huron Mermaid, one of the underlying themes, almost a character, is COVID, because we wrote it during the pandemic. Weird time. I think we're still coming out of withdrawal from that time, I think, in many ways. But anyway, there was a man, never met him before. Name was David. He was in the audience. He comes up to me after the reading, and he's got a copy, of the book in his hand. And he wants me to inscribe it to his daughter and her partner. And I remember his name was David. His daughter's name was Celia. And I can't remember what the partner's name was. But at any rate, this partner is suffering from long haul COVID. And this is what a character in the book is suffering from. And he came to me with almost tears in his eyes. He says, no one is doing this. There is no other literature out there. I mean, there's factual literature out there from the science community, the medical community about COVID and the pandemic and the sociological results of that and what long haul COVID does. But I think he meant there wasn't any creative literature out there that addresses this, and he was really thankful for that. So I'm so pleased that connected with him.
Oh yeah, I feel like, not to be lofty here, but I do feel like we are going to be talking about this for years on end. I mean,
Yes.
it's something impactful on the level. I mean, history will look back on this as like. It's such a, and I don't even know if I'm doing proper analogies here, but I think of the thing that pops in my head is 1929 and the Great Depression and how
Yes.
that echoes for 10, 12 years after 1929.
Decades. Yeah.
And you see
Yeah.
F. Scott Fitzgerald writing about it, sort of after the fact. And so, yeah,
Right.
I think we are entering the period where literature is going to start coming out about it.
Right. Yeah. We that period really did reset. There was like a societal reset throughout the world, not just in our little communities. Same thing when you were talking about the Great Depression. I would add the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918. And I know that, well, I wasn't alive then, but personally in my family, my mother's family, before she was born in 1919. She's already passed, but she lost two sisters in that same year. One, unfortunately, was a playground accident. The little girl was only 7, but the other one was 18 months old, and it was the Spanish flu.
Wow.
And it was like 1918. And I only have one picture of that little girl, and she's sitting on my grandmother's lap. And my mother said, she looks healthy then. And 3 days later, she was dead. And that kind of flu, the Spanish flu hit younger people. COVID hit a lot of older people first, and then it like trickled down. But for the Spanish flu, it was really deadly for young people, and it was quick. It was very, very quick. So yeah, and that still has reverberations. And when we were looking at the Lake Huron Mermaid and decided to make COVID part of the narrative, I did do research on the Spanish flu, and not only because of the personal connection with my mother's family and how tragic that her parents buried 2 daughters in the same year. I can't even imagine that, but I did research on that pandemic, and it was brutal. And we had a brutal one with COVID. So yeah, those things just shift our sense of life and death and mortality and existence and relationships.
Oh, absolutely. Before we do get into the Lake Huron Mermaid, I believe, 3 questions that I'm going to hit you with in succession.
Right. Okay.
And the first one is simple. Could you just refresh folks take us a little bit back in time and refresh us about Bone Country, which is also kind of written pre-COVID or into COVID.
Yes, it was. Yeah, pre-COVID, because that's when we were traveling.
Right.
Didn't do much traveling from 2020 to 2022, 2023. But yeah, Bone Country, Jeff, it's one of my favorite collections. I love that collection. Hold on a second, because I could show it. Hold on.
Oh, yeah, of course. She's got a vast library behind her, lots of bookshelves.
Yes. Here I am.
And a wonderful desk. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yeah, look at this. Yeah, it's all messy. my messy desk. Anyway, but here's a copy of Bone Country. Lovely cover.
Yeah.
It's like a woods cover. And actually, the title poem, Bone Country, is really inspired the image, this forest image. With the water coming down, we have a little brook coming down here, and the title poem "Bone Country" really inspired the visual in that poetry. The imagery inspired the editorial team to pick this image. But at any rate, getting back to Bone Country, it came out. Cornerstone Press, which is the imprint of the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. That's their university press. It was published in 2023. I mentioned it won this award in 2024 from New York City. And the great thing about this collection, it started out as a failed travel journal. I mean, failed with a capital F. And I wanted to write like the greatest memoir of travel writing. And we still do now that COVID is not a big thing. Anymore, but we love to travel, and Bone Country is all about traveling from 1995 to 2019. And we did a lot of traveling out of the country. So what you see in Bone Country is not even the Western Hemisphere. It's not even the Americas, north, south, or central. It's all on the other side of the world. That's where these pieces take place. And they're all short.
Sure.
You'll see. Very, very short prose poems. And it is really my observation of the other side of the world. We start in Istanbul. There's Rome. There's Spain. There's a lot in Central Europe because all four of my grandparents came from Southern Poland. So there's a lot of poems about Central Europe, that border of Poland and Ukraine. Even before the war, I talk about that. I talk about that landscape. There's one poem called The Cemeteries Near the Ukrainian Border, written before the war there. And that was kind of prescient. But it is my my postcard from my heart to the world, because traveling to me really opens up your heart, opens up your eyes. And some of the people that I encounter in this book, they're really quite remarkable in their own way, in their own lives. And I just found out a few weeks ago, it got a sterling review in a literary journal called Presence, PREN. CE, and it is out of Caldwell University in New Jersey. And this reviewer really hit on the major theme of the book, and it's paying attention to every detail. And isn't that what all good art is, whether it's music or literature or poetry or film or dance, choreography? Music is just paying attention to what's around you so that you could bring that into your life, into your heart, and have it reflect in your work, in your writing, in your art.
Yeah, and I have to imagine, as someone who has also been an instructor of writing that has come up, you've had things in your past catalog of works, including Amber Necklace from Gdansk.
Amber Necklace from Gdansk.
That
yes.
Could be. You've had poetry that is maybe a response to history and a response to autobiography, but now what you're getting into, sort of with this, is with Lake Huron Mermaid is poetry that's in response to current events. And I think that I was just asking for your thoughts on the poet's role as responder to the exterior.
Right. And not only that, but as witness.
Right. That's right. That's the way.
I just don't mean in a very narcissistic way.
Sure. Like here. Yeah.
And I may go out on a limb by saying that, but it's, in some ways it's pretty straightforward to be a witness to your own life.
Yeah.
To the things that have happened to me or the things that have happened in my family, but to go outside of that box and witness what's around you. That to me is the most important kind of witness. Carolyn Forche does it beautifully in her work, stunningly. And what we did with the Lake Huron Mermaid and its companion, the Lake Michigan Mermaid, which came out first, won the Michigan Notable Book Award. There's a little seal of approval, and Lake Huron. These are basically short stories and poems. They're short stories and poems, fully illustrated, by the way, by Meredith Riddle. Every page is illustrated. I've never done anything like this before. Neither did Anne-Marie Oomen, because usually you have a poetry book or let's say my book of prose poems, and there's no illustrations. It's just all text, but this was something different. And we had this idea way back when with the Lake Michigan Mermaid to write a call and response book. There are two main characters in both of these books, but they're not sequels. So it's a different lake, a different mermaid, a different human character. But both of these books deal with family crisis. And with the Lake Michigan Mermaid, it was a young girl who lives on the shores of Lake Michigan. She may be 12, middle school, only child. Mm-hmm. She's alone. Her parents are divorced. Father is not around. And she lives with her mother and her grandmother, who has dementia, by the way, in this ramshackle house, a little, very small house on the shores of Lake Michigan. Economically, they're strapped. And you get the sense that the girl is bullied. She's alone, and she just feels that there is something in Lake Michigan that is calling to her, that wants to connect with her. And it's a mermaid that sees her loneliness, sees her isolation, and wants to befriend her. So these are not little Disney tales. This isn't for 3, 4, 5-year-olds. Both of these books are for like middle school age, YA and older, because a lot of adults love these books because it's not just a fairy tale for little kids. It's being taught in high schools and universities. It's an intergenerational book. So in the Lake Michigan Mermaid, we have the family crisis of the girl that is alone in the world. And her mother wants to sell the cottage. She wants to put the grandmother in a nursing home. So it is a family crisis for this young girl. In the Lake Huron Mermaid, different lake, different story, different narrative. And it's an older girl. And she is maybe 15. She's in high school. Mm-hmm. And she's an orphan. She has a sister, though. She's not only child. She has an older sister who's like maybe 6, 7 years older. And but their parents are dead. They depend on each other. And the older sister is a nurse in a hospital downstate, probably in the Detroit area. And it's the older sister that develops long haul COVID in the very beginning of the pandemic, when things weren't sure as to what was evolving with this virus. And so what happens is the crisis is the young sister has to take care of her older sister and has to do the reversal in the caretaking. And there is the Lake Huron Mermaid that knows this conflict. At the very beginning, the very first poem in the book, which is in the voice of the mermaid, which is me. I'm the voice of the mermaid in all the mermaid poems. And Anne-Marie Oomen is the voice of the young girl in both of our books. This mermaid senses this drama going on the shore. These sisters embracing with their tears. And so she feels a kinship with the sisters because she has a sister. Mm-hmm. And her sister is the Lake Michigan Mermaid. Now, Lake Michigan Mermaid only has a little cameo at the very end of the new book because the main characters are Dawn, the girl, and the mermaid's name is Aurora Elilacia. And I'll tell you how I came up with that name. You've never heard of that name before, but, and the same thing with the Lake Michigan Mermaid. Her name is Filia Delacia. And I needed to come up with names that had nothing to do with Ariel or Mary Kay or Josie or Susan. It had to be a totally fresh name. So I looked at my old Latin dictionary from high school. And for the Lake Michigan Mermaid, her name, Filia Delacia, means daughter of the lake. And Aurora Elilacia, which is the Lake Huron Mermaid's name, means morning on the lake, because Lake Huron is our morning side lake, the sunrise lake. And then Lake Michigan is the sunset lake. So I devised these long names based on Latin syllables, Latin words to name my mermaid. So it's this Huron mermaid that sees this drama going on the shore between the two human sisters, and she knows their situation. She knows the bond between sisters because she's got one with the Lake Michigan mermaid. And something that I had forgotten, that both Lake Michigan and Lake Huron are the same lake, divided by the peninsula of Michigan, but they meet at the Straits. And in this book, there is drama that happens at the Straits of Mackinac when the well, I don't want to do the spoiler alert. I won't. I tell people buy the book to read the ending. But at any rate, there is that sense of the bond of sisterhood in this new book.
It's a bit of an epiphany to be like that. This sequel seems almost like it was calling to you, like it was almost necessary. You know?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And here's the thing. Lake Michigan Mermaid was very successful, very popular when won the Michigan Notable Book Award in 2019, the only poetry book to get it.
Wow.
The only poetry book. And to tell you the truth, I won't go into many details, but it was kind of controversial. The committee was very much, the awards committee loved it, but they were getting some flack from quote unquote other poets who didn't get the award, who felt, well, is this, real serious poetry? Oh, yes, it is. And so we were very pleased and honored to be, given the award. And when we were doing so many of our projects and readings and programs, because we have PowerPoints for both books, we have PowerPoints of the story behind the story, the illustrations, the poems. And like I said, the Lake Michigan Mermaid was so successful. We did 50 presentations, 50, from 2018 to 2020, right before the pandemic shut everything down. We did 50 presentations, and just about at all of these presentations, we heard the same thing. When is the next mermaid book coming out?
Wow.
To answer your question or to comment on your point that people, the readers, the audience, they really wanted to continue this mermaid saga, and they didn't know if it was going to be a sequel or not, and we didn't know at that time. But when we hit on the Lake Huron Mermaid, we knew it would be a different story, and so we considered companion pieces. But it was the readers and the audience that wanted that journey to continue. We were very happy about it.
I'm so curious. This will sound so nerdy, but does the idea, which of the two ideas comes first? The idea that actually I'm going to say this is actually a good question because it does lead into one of the themes of the book, and that is sisterhood. But I would ask, which idea came first? The idea for the two main characters of the book, at least the humans on the shore, to be sisters, or the mermaids should be sisters too? Or did it kind of come in harmony?
Yeah, this is interesting because we did not start with that theme of sisterhood, Jeff. Yeah. It was a long haul process for our revision.
Okay.
We had a totally different story. It was going to be an only child again, like from an immigrant family, living like in the Thumb area, and they were farmers, and there was this story about a shipwreck. I mean, you wouldn't believe the convoluted way we got from one idea to the next, but we went through a good 6 or 7, 8 major revisions before we hit on the whole idea of the sisterhood. And it was the human sisters first. Mm-hmm. And then when we considered those two beautiful Great Lakes being connected, we're thinking, we already got that Lake Michigan Mermaid. She's the sister of our new mermaid. So that's how the journey started.
Perfect. That's perfect. And, frankly, we need more odes to these two lakes. We already have a lot of songs about Lake Superior and Lake Erie.
Yes, we do.
And Ontario's Ontario. But these two feel very special. They feel very Michigan.
And they're very connected.
Yeah.
And here's the thing too. I didn't know that much about Huron.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm originally from Ohio, from Cleveland, from northern Ohio, so I know a lot about Lake Erie. That little she's the little sister. She's the one I think that's really bullied all the time in the Great Lakes family. But at any rate, and I know a lot about Lake Michigan because I've lived in Michigan now, for wow, 57 years now.
Wow.
Most of my life has been living in this state. But I really didn't know that much about Huron. Neither did Anne-Marie Oomen. So we actually had 2 writing retreats on the shores of Lake Huron to see how this plot was going to develop, because the shore of Lake Huron is very different than Michigan. It's rocky. It's craggy. Michigan, you have those wonderful dunes and the sand. You don't get that on the Huron side. It's more raw.
It is.
Or not as touristy, so to speak.
Right.
So we had one writing retreat the winter of 2019 in East Tawas. No, Port Austin. And then we had another writing retreat in the summer of 2020 in Port Austin or East Tawas. So anyway, we were in those 2 different cities, winter and summer. And that really spoke to us. That's where we got the whole idea of the sisters, the whole idea of the plot development, because we had the shipwrecks going on. Oh, that one shipwreck thing. Another thing, people don't know there are more shipwrecks on the bottom of Lake Huron than in any other Great Lake, even more than Superior, which blew my mind.
Wow.
That's how little I knew about that lake. So I was doing all this historical research, and there was going to be a special ring that was lost in a shipwreck and like in the 1800s, and it was the ancestors of this family that were farmers. It was like far out. Too many characters, too much of a layered, convoluted plot. And then this ring was like the Lord of the Rings, like something out of Tolkien. We thought, no, we got to get rid of that. So that's when we looked at COVID as one of our, subplots, and having it just develop into 2 sisters, but have one of the sisters be the main character, which was Dawn, the younger sister, and then one of the mermaid sisters being the main character, meaning the Lake Huron Mermaid, Aurora Elalasia. And then the name of the human sister, the younger one, is Dawn. So that was a wonderful connection with Dawn, the human sister, and Aurora Elalasia, the mermaid's name, because Aurora is another name for Dawn. So yeah, that's how it started.
And then dig more into that sisterhood theme and the importance of togetherness, especially in trying times. And that's really what's tapped into here.
Yeah. And actually, when we do our PowerPoint, one of the things that I talk about towards the end is what this book means to me personally. And it is the sister thing. Specifically in my life, I have one sister, only one sibling. I don't come from a big family. It's just me and my sister. She's younger than me. She's 8 years younger than me. She still lives in the Cleveland area. And actually the book is dedicated to her. This is really her book because she really inspired that sense of longing and wanting to be together all the time. Because being in another state, I don't see her as often as I'd like to. I'd love to be able to have like lunch with her once a week. That doesn't happen. And when we get together, we have a great time. We're very, very close. We talk quite frequently, but I know that sense of wanting that connection more often than not. So that's why the whole idea of the bonding of sisterhood, I didn't have to think deeply about it because it was already there for me when we were plotting the narrative, when we got to the sisterhood thing. And the whole idea of the Lake Huron mermaid longing to see her Lake Michigan mermaid sister. And yeah, they're connected by the water, but still, she says, I'd like to see her. I'd like to see her more often. And so I could really connect with that sense of longing.
And to give us some backstory on meeting Anne-Marie Oomen and working with her in that collaboration.
Oh, well, this is a story.
Oh, boy.
And this is what we like to talk about, even when we talk about Lake Huron, we have to talk about how this mermaid journey began with the Lake Michigan Mermaid. Well, go back to 2006, I believe. There was a wonderful anthology called Freshwater, Women Writing on the Great Lakes. It was published by Michigan State University Press, edited by Allison Swan from Ann Arbor. And these were not poems, prose writing, either memoir, creative nonfiction, short story. And I was invited to submit something, not a poem, but a little prose piece. And I submitted a piece on Lake Erie, and it could be anything on the Great Lakes. There were like 22 of us, 22 all women contributors. And so I did my little bit on Lake Erie. Anne-Marie had a piece in there on Lake Michigan, of course. And so when it won the Michigan Notable Book Award, there were book launches all throughout the state. First one was in Saugatuck. This was in 2007. So out of the 22 people, women that were involved with this anthology, maybe 8 were able to make that Saugatuck book launch, because some people lived in New York. They wrote about Lake Ontario. So there was a whole scattering of women, but only 8 could make that reading. So I'm sitting next to Anne-Marie, and I've known her for years. And you wanted to know about our relationship. I've known her for years professionally. We're sitting next to each other, and there's some guy in the back of the room in Saugatuck, and he says, with all these women here, there should be a Lake Michigan Mermaid. Why isn't there a Lake Michigan Mermaid? And I'm thinking to myself, like, who is this disembodied voice, and how do you answer that? It was like a rhetorical question. So I looked at Anne-Marie. She looked at me. We laughed. That night, that very night, this is the dramatic moment. She's driving home. She lives near Traverse City. Long drive from Saugatuck to Traverse City. She's got a new cell phone, and she calls me up. And I'm a night owl. She calls like at 10:30. I pick up. And she says, Linda, remember that question at the end of the evening, that guy in the back of the room, and he says, why isn't there a Lake Michigan Mermaid? She says, I have an idea. And the idea is, I don't know if these are going to be poems or short pieces of fiction or a memoir, but I can see a collection of 2 voices, the voice of a young girl that lives on the shore of Lake Michigan and the voice of a mermaid. She didn't know where it was going to go from there. She just had the 2 characters in mind. And and she says, I could see it like a call and response, 2 different voices. And we choose our role. And I immediately said, I want to be the mermaid. Because I wanted to construct a name, and I came up with this Philia Delacia for the Lake Michigan Mermaid's name, which I thought was a pretty good idea. I didn't know it at the time what I was going to name her, but I knew that I wanted to delve into this whole idea of myth, contemporary myth, folklore, mythology. So we started this process, and Jeff, it took us 10 years. Not that, and it's the Lake Michigan Mermaid is the same length. We're not talking War and Peace here. Little, thin book. But we were doing other projects at the time. My father died during this time. So did Anne-Marie's father. Life, came into play. But we always believed in this process, call and response. Anne-Marie would send me 2 poems in the girl's voice. I would respond with 2 poems in the mermaid's voice. So this went on and on, back and forth for 10 years. Finally, it was accepted by Wayne State University Press. Great. But they said, we will publish it only if it's illustrated. We never thought about an illustrated book before. As I said, this is the first for me, the first for Anne-Marie. So we're wondering now what? So we kind of auditioned 3 or 4 different artists. They weren't giving us what we wanted. And they were giving us Walt Disney, a little, Ariel with the red hair. I'm telling you, the red hair, the little seashells on her breast. I mean, the whole ball of wax. And we thought this isn't that kind of story. This story is about a family in crisis. There's no fairy tale ending. There's a resolution, a good resolution at the end of the story, but no No Fairy Tale Ending. And then we hit on Meredith Riddle. And this was the first drawing she did as like what she thought. Look at that tail. And I looked at this. I had the original in my hand, and I said, this is our mermaid. Look at the mystery here. Look at this wonderful tail that follows her. And so she was contracted to do Lake Michigan Mermaid and Lake Huron Mermaid. And the wonderful connection here is, and this has never happened in my 50-year career, that guy in the back of the room in Saugatuck, that it was Jack Riddle, who used to teach at Hope College. He's a wonderful poet in his own right. This is his daughter that is the artist.
Oh, wow.
Jeff, you can't make this up. And it is such a brilliant story. Whenever we tell this like story of epiphany, people can't believe it. And like I said, in my almost 50 years of doing this, I've never had, it's more than kismet or coincidence or wow, is it that cool? It's almost like a miracle that this random question by this man in the back of the room starts this process. And Jeff, we didn't even know it would be illustrated. We didn't know that Wayne State University Press would accept it. And we didn't know, because we went through like 3 or 4 different illustrators before we hit on the artist Meredith Riddle, that it's the daughter of the man that started this whole journey. I mean, think about it.
That's wonderful.
I mean, it's never happened in my career, probably never will.
And this almost maybe appropriately looks like watercolors that she's working in.
Yes, she does. She does water. That is her medium for both mermaid books. And look at the different palette too. There's a blue, green, turquoise, aquamarine palette in the Lake Michigan Mermaid. And then we have a warmer palette of pinks, corals, mauves, purple, lilac, deep red. So you have the different palette of colors that she used. And actually, for the Lake Huron Mermaid, the palette of this book was really informed by the colors of sunrise on that lake. Oh, Jeff, when we were doing our writer's retreat, we get up real early to take pictures of the lake and the sky, and you would see gray, mauve, purple, pink. Those were the palettes of the new book. And that's what we told Meredith. And just a stunning array. And also, spoiler alert, there's another significant object that's very important with the Lake Huron Mermaid, and it's an opal amulet. Opal. And the translucent reflections in an opal are so much like the colors of dawn on Lake Huron. So it's just, it was meant to be that it's this opal, and it's not an opal ring like Lord of the Rings. It's an amulet that the older sister gives to the younger sister as a little keepsake when she goes off to the hospital in Detroit and gets COVID. But before she leaves, she gives her younger sister this opal amulet. And Dawn, the girl, likes to dive. She likes to swim in Lake Huron. She's a deep diver. And in one dive, she loses the amulet. She loses her necklace. And I'll just leave it there. You have to buy the book to find out, if it's found, who finds it. But that opal was a significant object that also tied in with the story and with the sense of connection and with the connection of that palette, that wonderful palette of colors that we see in the sky above Lake Huron during the dawn time.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put. I do want to move back into poetry in general and Poetry Month. And for any poets who are listening or anyone who just feels like they want to write a poem, I wondered if you could just talk about all the possibilities that are offered by poetry and the different modes you can get into. You can just write a classic poem, a narrative poem, a prose poem, and I'd also be curious to hear what that's like for you to shift into those modes.
Yeah. I love the different ways poetry walks in the world. I just love it. And there's not one kind of poem. And even I tell my students, there is not one way to look at a poem. There's no wrong way or right way to look at a poem by Emily Dickinson or Walt Whitman. There's your way. It's how you bring your life, your sensibility to it. And that makes sense and is valid. I know even when I teach writing workshops and people want me to teach my own work, which I happily do. And I had one residency before COVID. We were in Poland for a month and I did a month-long residency. I was poet in residence at a university in southern Poland, south of Krakow. It was the University of Bielsko-Biała. Lovely word. Bielsko-Biała is the sister city in Poland of Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids has 5 sister cities around the world. And in Poland, that's the sister city, Bielsko-Biała. And when I was there, I taught at the English language seminar. I taught undergraduate and graduate students. And a couple of the classes, they wanted to look at my own work. And sometimes they were hesitant in talking about my own work to me. And I said, listen, I broke the ice by saying, there's no wrong way to look at this poem. There's no right way. There's your way. Let's talk about it. And when I said that, that broke the ice, opened the class discussion up. And there was one student, I'll never forget this guy, who looked at one of my poems, the end of it, in a very different way. And it was brilliant. And I never thought of that before. And it's actually a poem where I mention the death of those 2 girls in my mother's family who died. Those 2 sisters who died in the same year. One was 7, died in a playground accident. One was 18 months old, died of the Spanish flu. They both died the year before my mother was born. And I talk about that in the poem. And the very end of the poem, it ends with the winter scene in a harbor with 2 boats locked in the ice, listening into each other, like deep in the sleep of winter. And I meant that to be the 2 sisters in their graves. And this one student in Poland said, I felt it was the mother and father locked in their grief. And that was brilliant. So he brought a whole other emphasis and dimension to the work. And that is just as valid, if not more so, than my original concept of the 2, sisters, the 2 little girls. So at any rate, what I love about poetry is that expansive quality of the possibility. You have the classic poets, you have the formalists, you have the beats, you have the neo beats, you have the slam poetry, you have the spoken word, which is different. You have hip hop, which is different, and it's all there. And it's all necessary. And I think bravo for all of that.
Yeah. Oh, and I love that. Openness to interpretation. But that's why we need poetry. We can apply it to our own lives, our own experiences when we need it, when we really need a sense of validation. I like that word for this. Yeah. Validation can be used elsewhere, but like validation. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
And how we really are so connected in our human family. And Jeff, more binds us than separates us. Mm-hmm. And that's what poetry can do too. That's what poetry can do too. And all the war and the infighting and all that BS that goes around is so invalid as far as I'm concerned with what the human spirit is all about. It really is. And unfortunately, we're always going to have that junk with us over history. I mean, what I'd love to see, there's a new movie out called The Return about the Odyssey with Ray Fiennes and Juliette Binoche. And it's about Ulysses finally coming back after 20 years back home. And at one point, I haven't seen the movie, but one trailer I've seen, Penelope, the wife of Ulysses, says, "Why is there always war? Why do men kill women and children?" We can say that right now, in this moment, in this time, with what's happening, let's say in Ukraine. Why? For what reason? What is that about? Is it power? Is it greed? Is it money? Is it land grab? It's all that junk that really shouldn't matter. And the whole idea of good literature, and I can speak as a poet because I'm not a novelist or a screenwriter, is that poetry sometimes, not sometimes, but I think its main focus, its main mission is to witness to our common humanity. We saw it in Bone Country. All these people, whether they're in Istanbul or the Ukrainian border or a field in southern Poland or, a museum in Madrid, they're all connected. And that's what I think is my role as a poet, is to emphasize those connections.
And thus, the Lake Huron Mermaid also is talking about the human experience, particularly during COVID, with wonderful artistic flourish. I have to imagine you've already fielded this question of what's next, or what are you working on next, or what are you looking forward to next, Linda?
Well, I have a couple of things. I have one big project that I just completed. I won't go into any details because I'm superstitious and I don't want to jinx it. But it's a solo project, a big project, and I'm hoping that will find a good home and a platform. But when it comes to our mermaid sagas, let's talk about this.
Sure.
We would love to continue.
Okay.
And we already have the next one in mind with characters and a storyline. I can't say more than that. Everyone wants to know, what is it going to be? And I can't say, neither can Anne-Marie, but we're both thinking about this. And what I would like to tell you and your viewers, your listeners, your audience is, if you love these mermaid sagas, Lake Michigan Mermaid, Lake Huron Mermaid, please let Wayne State University know that we would like this saga, this journey to continue. And because we would certainly love to be there for the continuation of this. Absolutely.
And you can go to lindanemecfoster.com. And you can also go to Anne-Marie Oomen.com, which we will link to in the show notes. And I'm sure Meredith Riddle is out there on Instagram too. I'll find the links to that too in the show notes. Yes, indeed. At MRIDL. That is how you spell his name.
Yes. Yeah. And keep in mind that I am not on any social media. I am such a Luddite, neo-Luddite. I'm not on Facebook or X or Instagram or TikTok, but I do have a website and email. And boy, I even have a landline. Nice. So anyway, there are certainly ways to contact me, and I love to hear via email and via my website people who are interested in my books, interested in my work. We love doing programs and presentations. Like I said, we have a PowerPoint for the Lake Michigan Mermaid and the Lake Huron Mermaid. So contact us if you'd like us to present for your organization, school, library, university, community center. But we want to continue the journey with our mermaids, because there's a lot going out in the world that we can include in our poetry. These short stories, all written in poetry, fully illustrated. So, yeah.
Beautifully put. I knew the best way I could cap off Poetry Month here on this podcast would be a chat with Linda Nemec Foster. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you, Jeff.
Folks at home, thanks for listening to another episode of A Little Too Quiet. It is the Ferndale Library Podcast. It's brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library. Again, all the information about Linda and Anne-Marie and Meredith and all of this, go to the show notes. We'll have links. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe and tell your friends about this podcast if you enjoy it. We'll be back next week with more. Thanks for listening.